You know, they're selling y'all wolf tickets, people. You're eating them right up.
Hey, pussy, are you still there?
I back. Trust me, I back.
But I'm not impressed by your performance.
You'll do nothing. You'll do nothing. Shut your fucking mouth, you'll do nothing. You'll do fucking nothing. Not one of you'll do nothing.
I'll tell you what, bro. You know, I was out there, I was fighting all the hitters, bro. You ain't fought no hitters.
Come on, guys. It's normal.
I'm not saying I would fight you. I would kill you.
John, do you think I'm just gonna sit there and let you kill me, John? I mean, really?
No, don't be scared, homie. I'd like to take this chance to apologize to absolutely nobody.
I'm gonna beat you into the living death. I mean, maybe that's your job, but where I come from, you know, people like that get slapped.
That's fucking illegal.
Next year, you just shook up the world. How's that feel?
Hey, I'm not surprised, motherfuckers.
Yeah, this is a simulated death match. And you haven't simulated anybody's death yet.
I said it last year. We're not here just to take part. We're here to take over.
What is the game plan going in against him?
The game plan is you go in there, hit him with some good shit, don't get hit, and come home with a pocket full of cash.
Who the fuck is that guy?
Everybody's on steroids. The whole UFC, everybody.
I'm gonna go home tonight. I'm gonna drink a Coors Light. That's a Coors Light because Bud Light won't pay me nothing.
Do you want to be a fighter? That is my question.
Any of you radio personalities think you want smoke? Call me Mr. Chimney. I want smoke.
Yes. What is up? What is up, MCR family? Another daily edition of the show live on YouTube, obviously podcast from iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, etc. Smash the like button, share the show, subscribe, listen on podcast form, drop that 5-star review. Obviously, I'm Matt, the Hipster Hunter, joined today not by Mr. Robbie Hearns himself. No. Someone a lot more special and important in the industry. Shots fired. Yo, Rob's going to hate me so much for that. Joined by Mr. Anthony Walker himself from ShareDog.com. Anthony, how are you doing?
What's up, man? How you feeling today, brother?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I just saw, obviously, the new Spider-Man movie yesterday. Fantastic.
Yes, I did.
Fantastic.
Yep. I'm still in fanboy mode right now. It was great. I loved it. Aquaman sucked ass.
I still need to see Aquaman. So hopefully, I don't think it's as bad as you, but man, that Spider-Man movie was amazing. I'm still on cloud 9 from that, I'll be honest. But anyways, digress from our nerd fandom that we both share. Obviously, we have some big UFC news and MMA news to discuss today. Jon Jones versus Anthony Smith, Tyron Woodley versus Kamaru Usman, both sort of announced within the same day, probably within the same 24 hours to be more exact, for the UFC 235 card in Vegas. A lot of sort of angles we can take with these announcements. Obviously, let's first go to report it. TMZ was the first to report the Jon Jones announcement, but I have zero respect for TMZ, so I'm going to give a shout out to, obviously, Brett Okamoto from ESPN, who is a fantastic reporter for his article, which I definitely go read, better than what you're going to find on TMZ, about this news. And obviously, right after that, we had Woodley versus Kamaru Usman, not Colby Compton, which was reported by Ariel Helwani, obviously of ESPN as well. Let's first, I think, stick with chronological with the news announcement. Jon Jones versus Anthony Smith. Were you as not surprised about this news as I am, to be honest? Or were you actually taken aback by this announcement of Jon Jones versus Anthony Smith?
I kind of expected it. I didn't expect it to be announced so soon. I thought maybe there'd be a little more distance between 232 and Jon Jones's next booking, especially considering the fact that Nevada has to sign off on his future license. Mm-hmm. And that hearing isn't until, I believe, the 29th of this month. So it almost feels like why would you rush to make that announcement when it isn't a certain outcome as to what's going to happen with the future of his career from a regulation standpoint?
I mean, that was sort of the talking point, so to speak, of a lot of us media at UFC 232 was after the Nowitzki scrum, all that. The last sort of big question we had was, well, what happens if Jon Jones doesn't get licensed or he actually gets suspended by Nevada, which they can do. We've seen this last year, Nevada go about punishment different than the promotional company / PD regulation entity with the WBC and VADA with the Canelo case. Obviously, WBC and VADA both ruled it was a tainted meat for clenbuterol. No suspension at all was forthcoming from the clean boxing program. Obviously, then Nevada came in and gave out a 6-month suspension, which derailed the Canelo Triple G fight for a few months. Do you think that happens here? I know that's been talked about a lot as a theory that's a possibility, but is it probable? Because I'm of the mindset that I don't really think that happens. I think Nevada is going to see the alleged pay-per-view buy rate of UFC 232, which for Therese Owens, another website I really have very little, trust in. They reported that's 900,000 pay-per-view buys for, Jones versus Gus 2. Do they just look at the money and say, let's take it? Or is it another Canelo case?
I mean, first of all, it's not the figure isn't real until Dave Meltzer reports it. So let's just shout out to Dave Meltzer for doing good work.
Yes.
But I really think that nothing will happen of this, but Nevada is very unpredictable. They've gone so many different ways on the same issues. I mean, I think we referenced this one time on your show before, that one hearing that had Chael Sonnen, Vitor Belfort, and Vanderlei Silva all in question for bad tests for the same fight in that round robin of a trio for what it was booked, and all of them were treated vastly different. And the one who had some of the more egregious suspensions was actually offered a job by Nevada, while the one guy who had never tested for anything, granted he didn't run from the test, in Vanderlei Silva, he was suspended for life. And then we've seen Nick Diaz have an actual legal team represent him and present science and present like genuine facts that they disregarded because fuck it. Like there seems to be a culture with Nevada Athletic Commission where a lot of it is grandstanding, a lot of it is showboating, a lot of it is to make a display. And quite frankly, we probably could even look at the results of the hearing about Canelo and the Triple G fight as an extension of that, because they offered a punishment that got reported in the news and it became a big headline, but it really didn't do anything because several months later they were fighting in Nevada. So I honestly don't know what to expect from this commission, but I think it's a very dangerous game to go ahead and plan things that are dependent on them when you don't really know what's going on. And granted, there's probably cash in a briefcase somewhere in Las Vegas being passed around. Bob Bennett's probably got a nice little cushion in his couch for just stacks and stacks of money, possibly. Allegedly.
Key emphasis on allegedly.
But taking Dana White at face value for what he said at the post-fight presser when I asked him, he doesn't know what's going to happen with Nevada. He's confident that this will swing in the UFC's favor, but he doesn't know. That seems like a really risky proposition to announce this as a main event for a card that we've expected to be a big card for a while. I mean, originally, I believe Cormier Lesnar was discussed as the main event for this card. So this is something that was going to be a huge pay-per-view, and they had this date set in stone, and it's already a very stacked card. But to announce that as a main event when you don't know what's going on, when all you got to do is wait a couple of weeks and get official word, it just seems a bit irresponsible to me.
Agreed. I think it's obviously sort of what's the term about a cart / wagon and the horse, pulling the cart before the horse, whatever the term is, right?
Like
what I'm talking about. It's sort of like that, where
horses and carts and shit.
Yeah, carts and shit, right? In a football term, running without actually catching the ball, and I think this a long line of moves by the UFC that's a little bit questionable. They go, hey, who's really steering the ship right now, and are they really fully invested into the product? Because it just seems, again, sort of a mishandling of the situation with Jon Jones. But beside that, the fight itself with Anthony Smith, obviously I'm not surprised they went with Anthony Smith. If you're not going to pick, if DC is not the option, and this is all but assuring in my mind that DC fights Lesnar in the near future, Anthony Smith was really the only relevant player and contender at light heavyweight, even though I think for most people will say this should be an easy fight for Jon Jones, for all intents and purposes. Is the matchup as easy as I and others claim, Anthony? Does Anthony Smith has a puncher's chance, any sort of chance, or is Jon Jones just levels and levels above his competition at this point, that this should be just an easy tune-up in a sense and a sort of build-up fight towards the DC fight?
I think this is I think both can exist. This is a chance where Anthony Smith, he definitely has a puncher's chance in the sense that he hits hard and he's shown himself to have really, really good crushing knockout power. But Jon Jones is the greatest talent the sport has ever seen. So there are levels to this shit, and then there's Jon Jones. So there's it's really not a comparison when you talk about skill set. And I think in Anthony Smith's last fight against Volkan Ozdemir, he showed a lot of weaknesses that Jon Jones would definitely capitalize on. I mean, Smith showed a lot of good things. He showed more diversity to his game than we had seen before. He showed that he can fight back through adversity. Something that he's demonstrated once or twice before in the past, and even just his overall career arc is overcoming adversity. But I mean, he's Jon Jones, man. Like, he's destroyed some of the greatest fighters ever.
Like, this would be up there with a Matt Serra GSP, but far worse for an upset in my mind.
You know what? Yeah, I mean,
because Matt Serra is sort of that blue collar sort of image, right? Sort of like Anthony
sort of
Smith.
that every man that's succeeding
right.
against all odds. That kind of like Rocky vibe to the whole thing. I could see that, but I mean, Serra GSP is one of those transcendent moments that is just one of the biggest upsets in sports history. Never mind MMA or combat sports. In sports history, that's one of the biggest upsets you'll ever see. So I wouldn't go as far as to say that, because Anthony Smith does possess a lot of power, and Jon Jones has been hit before. He's proven to have a very good chin, but not a lot of chins are going to last to what Anthony Smith can put on you.
I don't know about that. Just for argument's sake, why not? I think if Anthony Smith were to beat Jon Jones, it's far and away a bigger upset than Serra over GSP. Even though they both technically have a loss on their resume, one only really did. GSP had a loss to Matt Hughes at the point of the Matt Serra fight. Jon Jones has a DQ loss to Matt Hamill, and that's it. I think it would be different, let's be honest. And I think on top of that, Anthony Smith doesn't really have the pedigree as a Matt Serra. Like Matt Serra, even though he was on that season, The Ultimate Fighter, that was sort of the comeback season, the first one of it, the first iteration of that, he had legit, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu credentials and accolades. On top of that, he was a guy that's been in the UFC for a while at that point. He had fought high-level competition at the lightweight division before they axed that division. I think if we sort of can transport our mind in a sort of thought experiment, and I hate using that phrase, of an hour after Anthony Smith supposedly were to knock out Jon Jones at UFC 235, it would feel bigger. It would feel like a massive upset. It would feel like a transcending moment for the sport. It would definitely catapult Anthony Smith in another stratosphere for stardom, in my opinion. It would just be different.
I mean, I can't disagree with that for the most part, but here's the big difference between Anthony Smith getting an upset and Matt Serra getting an upset. Anthony Smith is known as a power puncher. He's known as a power striker. Matt Serra's credentials are in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So, if you were to say that Matt Serra submitted Georges St. Pierre, that would be much more in line with his skill set. Anthony Smith knocking out Jon Jones will be much more in line with his skill set. Now, if he submitted Jon Jones,
yes, okay, good point.
Okay, now we've lost our minds. Now all anarchy is broken loose. But still, Anthony Smith, I just don't. I think it speaks more to the light heavyweight division itself than to Anthony Smith, because I don't want to take any credit away from him. He's proven himself as a legit light heavyweight. He's done some amazing things. I mean, beating Volkan Ozdemir, finishing him nonetheless, is no easy task. Volkan Ozdemir is definitely one of the premier light heavyweights in the world right now. But I mean, Jon Jones is something else. He's not of this world. You know, and I don't think Anthony Smith is ready for that, no matter how much he prepares. Honestly, I don't think there's anyone in the world at light heavyweight that's ready for that.
Well, just look at, I mean, for example, Thiago Santos is now a contender in the division. Anthony Smith beat him, what, a year and a half ago in the middleweight division?
Santos knocked him out.
Was it the opposite? Oh, sorry. Other way around.
Santos knocked him out.
Santos knocked him out. So, I mean, it's one of those divisions that at any point people can come up and be a contender. Luke Rockhold is moving up to 205. He will instantly be a contender after he beats a Jan Blachowicz or something like that, right? Like, that's all he needs.
And you know what? I'm glad you mentioned Luke Rockhold. I totally forgot about that because I believe maybe a few hours before I saw the Jon Jones announcement against Anthony Smith, that Luke Rockhold was making the news because he was talking trash to Jon Jones, and he's definitely moving up to 205. He says now, and he said, "Come get it, princess," or something to that effect. And with a built-in rivalry already there, being Luke Rockhold, a teammate and good friend of Daniel Cormier, that just seemed like a no-brainer. Although it's hard to justify Rockhold in a title fight, but at this point, I think justifying someone in a title fight just doesn't mean anything in this day and age of the UFC.
That is definitely true, but I did just get like a flash image of Yoel Romero knocking out Rockhold with the fucking bolo punch all the way from back, when Rockhold's on the ground, just helpless.
And then kissing him tenderly.
All-time MMA moment, easily.
Most terrifying kiss known to man. Oh, my God. If Yoel Romero kissed me after beating me to oblivion, I just the thought makes me want to pee my pants.
Yeah, not for gay Jesus, not for gay Jesus. Yoel Romero, a treasure to the MMA community. But back to the division at 205. I think MMA fans, for a large part, have been spoiled by the division, with obviously the era of Wanderlei Silva, Chuck Liddell, Tito Ortiz. We grew up in a division that was deep. That was the star-studded division. It was our equivalent in a sense to maybe like an Ali, Frazier, Foreman like golden era of a division. It was the best it could be. But traditionally speaking, for combat sports, that weight range of 195 pounds, 205 pounds, that cruiserweight division for boxing has historically been the worst division in the sport, for boxing at least. And I think MMA fans are now sort of have to get accustomed to at least what the new division will be. The new division is going to look like this. It's going to be guys moving up from 185 to 205. It's going to be guys moving up to the heavyweight division. It's going to be sort of an in-between division potentially. Similar in a sense to what I think 145 is going to end up being. I think 145 is going to end up being a division where people move up to 155, toward a transition division for a lot of guys that get bigger, get stronger. And even though, not to sort of discredit, again, with Jon Jones over those guys in the division, because look at boxing. You have Alexander Usyk, who's making waves in the boxing world in the cruiserweight division. But it's still the cruiserweight division. And the second Jon Jones goes to heavyweight, that will be the new paradigm of light heavyweight. It will be not the greatest division of people we really don't care about. People moving up from 185, moving down from 265 in the heavyweight division. And that would just be interesting to see. I think the UFC fans, MMA fans as a whole, aren't aware of that, but I think that's where we're heading, to be honest.
Yeah, I really think the timing of Jon Jones was pretty interesting as far as the division goes, because you had a smooth transition from the Tito Ortiz era to Chuck Liddell and Randy Couture and their trilogy to then it kind of morphing into the inclusion of some fighters from Pride, including Wanderlei Silva, Rampage. Rashad Evans came around, and
Forrest
Shogun
Griffin
eventually won the title. And it's just that Jon Jones came around at a time being so young, and everyone else was just about to age out. They were just on the cusp of aging out, and he came and just slaughtered everyone, to the point where he just made it look easy and made a lot of guys, frankly, look silly in there. A lot of them looked like they didn't even belong in there with him. And then some of the guys who were able to perform at least halfway decently against him in spots, like Lyoto Machida, went down to 185, and the weight cutting culture became more prominent. So his entry into the UFC just came at such a strange time that that now you see that transition to, like you said, like the cruiserweight division in boxing, where you've got some standout talents, you've got guys that are very good, but they don't really have many opportunities to shine because the rest of the field just isn't developed.
Well, I just put it for this way. If you go back circa 05, right, where you have Chuck, Tito, Randy, Vanderlei, Vitor, Rampage Jackson, Rashad Evans on the come up in a couple years.
Babalu Sabral,
you have
Dan Henderson in and out.
You have a legit top 10 of all Hall of Famers, right? Arguably, Machida, comes in a few years later, and I think UFC fans don't realize how good we had it when we had a literal top 10 of all Hall of Fame talent. That doesn't exist really in combat sports. We rarely get that in any division, honestly. And I think, just because this division's barren compared to that golden age doesn't, to sort of go back to your point of not sort of not throwing shade on the competitors within that division. It's not their fault that their comparison is to a literal Hall of Fame era where everyone was Hall of Fame. Everyone was a legit transcendental star in a way, had insane talent, insane charisma. That's impossible to compare to.
And I think also, too, it's definitely important to highlight the differences in some of the weight cuts, where a lot of these guys that were standouts at 205 in that era, if they were to enter the MMA world now, they would fight at a different weight class. I think Rashad Evans is a great example of that. I mean, you saw the latter stages of his career. He made the move to 185. And he started at heavy for that division either.
He started at heavyweight in the Ultimate Fighter, like a lot of guys in Ultimate Fighter. But I mean, Kenny Florian started at 185 in Ultimate Fighter. There's just a long line of guys that started very big, and now with the weight cutting culture that's really infused itself into MMA. Though, to be honest, I see a counterculture to that. I see a lot of people pushing against massive weight cutting. So maybe we see it, the pendulum swing back to where guys that would be, like, for example, Anthony Smith, Thiago Santos, guys that are at 185, moving back up to 205. So it's one of those weird things where the weight cutting culture of cut the most amount of weight, be as big as possible. I mean, Michael Chiesa talked about this in the post-fight press, I want to say, at UFC 232. That era is gone, I would say. I think at least hopefully, maybe your point's wrong where the Rashad Evans, the Machidas of the world in the next generation aren't at 185. They're still at 205. That's really the best division for them.
Yeah, but that's something that's going to take years really to see more widespread. We just right now we're seeing like little bit examples here and there, but for the most part, those guys that were dominant at 205, the Machidas, the Rashad Evans, Shogun even, those are guys that if them at that same size were to enter the UFC now, they would not be interested in light heavyweight, and if they were, they would definitely be the exception and not the rule.
Agree. I largely agree with you. A quick comment from the chat. Jay Protege is saying, I think lightweight has a lot of future Hall of Famers, if not all. I don't know about that, but it does have insane talent. The one problem with the lightweight division doesn't have that fan reaction and love. Like, think about like Machida, Evans, Forrest Griffin, Shogun Hua, Vanderlei Silva. These are cult heroes, right? Like in the MMA community, really. Let alone the Chucks, the Titos, the Randy Coutures. Those are legends, right? Lightweight has McGregor, Khabib. So those two, definitely Hall of Famers. Definite, I think, are beloved by the fans, or at least have beloved fan bases. Tony, maybe. Not that these guys aren't talented, but I don't think that the fans have reacted to this lightweight division like they did 205 circa the early 2000s.
No, I can't disagree with that. I think also too that division has the exact opposite problem, where lightweight is so stacked and there's so much talent and everybody is great. I mean, you look at the top 10 and it is not unfathomable to see either one of those guys with the belt in the near future. So you have so many guys that are so great that it's hard to stand out amongst the pack. And I think when you start talking about Hall of Fame considerations, when you don't stand out from the pack for whatever reason, that's going to come out against you when those decisions are made.
Good point. And plus, obviously, I mean, the 205 division did sort of help by having a Pride division and a UFC division when that was really hot, when the Pride versus UFC discussions on forums was everywhere online. So you had a fervorous Pride fan base saying Vandalay was the best 205 pounder, or Rampage Jackson was the best 205 pounder, and then you had the UFC fans saying Chuck was, or Tito was, and then Vitor was going back and forth at the time. You know, it just, again, it's super hard to compare it to that era. It's like comparing any sort of heavyweight era in boxing to the Ali, Frazier, and Foreman. It will never truly compare to that in a 1-to-1 analog. Moving away from that, let's get to the co-main event, UFC 235, which was obviously announced by Ariel Helwani. Tyron Woodley versus Kamaru Usman, a fight that obviously has been talked about, so I knew it was a possibility, but I didn't think it was going to happen. And I'm, again, let down by the UFC. And I'll be honest, I had this weird thought in my head, conspiracy theory here, right? Right. I'm like, what if this is the UFC's attempt to make people like me who hate Colby Covington feel bad for him? Right? Like in a long-term thing, like, oh, he's not getting the title shot, man. Like, obviously it should be Colby's shot. He was ready. He's healthy. It's only about money, right? That's what Ariel Helwani is saying. It's only he stayed out for more cash. He didn't get it, so they went to Kamaru Usman. I kind of feel bad for the stupid, Trumper. I'll be honest. It's just like, and maybe that was the UFC's goal. I don't know. Again, alleged, pure speculation. But I kind of feel bad for Colby Covington here. I'll be honest.
Man, you know what? I feel like speaking out in defense of Colby Covington.
I can't do it, but
and as soon as, like, literally the moment that we turn this recording off, I'm gonna go gargle some battery acid because this is against everything.
You know the scene of Ace Ventura when he's in the shower and he has to burn his clothes.
Oh yeah, and he's got the toilet plunger on his face. Like that's what I feel like right now.
Yeah.
But like we are forced to defend Colby Covington and the stripper that was twerking with the picture of his fight pics. Like this is like pretty amazing to me that the UFC has for the second time passed up on a surefire hit.
Yes.
Like they've had their issues with Tyron Woodley, and it's like this figuring out how they're going to market him, how they're going to sell Tyron Woodley, because obviously you ain't getting rid of him. You know, they tried that with Darren Till. You're not just going to get rid of the man. The man has got the belt, and you got to deal with him. And he's going to be in your face. He's going to say whatever he feels like saying. So, hey, let's put a dollar sign in front of this, and let's match him with the guy who is his exact polar opposite as a human being, in as far as socioeconomics and politics and all that stuff goes. Let's go ahead and put him against his exact opposite, who is going to try to sell the fight as best as he can, and these two genuinely don't like each other. Oh, and by the way, that other guy has a title belt that we gave him out of the damn blue. So yeah, let's just disregard that. And then to make it even worse, Kamaru Usman, although I think he's a better athletic challenge for Woodley, I think competition wise he would do better against Woodley than Covington would. Like Usman's case being boosted by his wins over Dos Anjos and Damian Maia seems very strange, considering those are the same two people that Colby Covington beat.
And Colby beat him first. Like, and again, like when the Till fight happened, Colby had the nasal surgery. He had some sort of procedure, right? And I was of the mindset that, oh, they should have just waited. Like they could have just scrapped the event. I'm okay with that. And wait to make that fight. They didn't. They chose to make the Till fight, so the schedule was off. Whatever, right? So I'm like, okay. But the fact that he is completely healthy and it's only a matter of money, I have no idea what the thought process is. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe they're thinking, look, Woodley versus Covington, it has to be main event. And for this fight, the way our schedule is looking, we want Woodley as a co-main event. He's the only champion that's available, and we need a co-main for this fight because we want this card to be big. But even that, I think it's such a bullshit excuse. Like
just make up another belt like they do any other time. Just make up another belt for your co-main. Nobody cares, and leave it at that. Like the idea of having, or I mean, Robbie Lawler and Ben Askren is on this card as well. You mean to tell me that's not a co-main event? I'm just not quite understanding the logic.
This whole card is stacked. I don't have the list in front of me. The bout list.
I got it pulled up right here, so I'll read it off. So main event: Jon Jones versus Anthony Smith. Co-main: Woodley versus Usman. Lawler, Askren behind that. Magomed Shapirov and Jeremy Stevens at featherweight. Holly Holm and Aspen Ladd. Diego Sanchez versus Mickey Gall. OSP versus Misha Serkinov, and Tisha Torres versus Weili Zhang are the other fights announced. And all of those fights sound ridiculous. Shut up and take my money.
And here's the thing, even with like this fight, like Woodley Usman, like I really like this fight. This is a fight that I wanted to see eventually, obviously. Usman seemed like the next generation of a Woodley in a lot of ways. Both guys had similar come-ups where they were just predominantly top position wrestlers. And they both transitioned their games to far more than that. Both can obviously tap into the African American fan bases. So the idea that let's put Usman here for the fight, ignore Colby. I definitely disagree with that. But this fight is still good. The card is still great. Like that's the hard part where it feels like maybe it's harping on the fight itself, or maybe the card itself, because the card is good, the fight is good, but it could be better. Like this event could be more than what it is. Maybe that's my issue and gripe with it.
It just makes me think that there's a lot more going on behind the scenes than Colby Covington wanting a little bit more money. Something different has to be going on. Because let's put your 10-4 hats on, ladies and gentlemen. I struggle to understand the logic in this when you have the constant efforts to devalue all these title belts, the constant effort to just throw away the slam dunk fight to make. The slam dunk fight. This fight makes itself. This is one of those rare times where like competition, as far as rankings go, it makes the most sense. And then as far as a business sense, as far as marketability, it makes sense. It's very rare that these two things coexist.
And it's not happening in the UFC,
and it's not, and it's not happening. So, I mean, I don't know. Kamaru Usman is managed by Ali Abdelaziz, who definitely has a habit of making the news cycles. So I don't know what magic he's working behind the scenes. I don't know
a lot of magic.
He's got the lost footage of Dana White in his segment in Surviving R. Kelly or something on his hard drive that he's blackmailing everyone with. I don't know, but it's really amazing to me that they throw away the slam dunk idea. So I don't know if it's Ali's management skills or whatever's going on behind the scenes. I don't know if there's some sort of friction beyond just Colby Covington wanting to get paid more. I wouldn't even be surprised if this was some effort to undercut Woodley and denying him what looks like the most marketable fight that you can put him in outside of GSP. So I really don't know how to understand this, and I don't like the idea of you tabling a fight that's a slam dunk that makes sense to make in order to risk it on something else that, while it could be an entertaining fight, and I'm not mad at the matchup in and of itself, but it just doesn't have the electricity of Woodley Covington. The one thing I can say though, if I were to be covering the Woodley Covington fight, if that fight actually does happen, I will be very surprised if I made it out of fight week without a fan calling me the N-word.
Definitely. Shout out to Colby Covington and that fan base. This felt dirty. This felt really weird. Defending Colby Covington here. It's just a weird time for the UFC because, like you said, all the reasons you ran down of why this fight is not being made, it's all weird reasons. Like, it's not that they're not possible. Like, the UFC to conduct bad business on themselves in order to spite a fighter, it's been done before. Like, that's not a new thing. That's not fantasy. It's been done probably recently. It's probably been done to Woodley within the last year, I would argue.
Around the Darren Till fight, I think.
Yeah, probably around there. I mean,
sometime around
just
there.
just spitballing here, right?
Around the cancellation of 233.
just a lot of stuff, right? You can
something like that.
But again, I always go back to the question of who's steering the ship, because even though I still am highly critical of the Fertitta era, it felt different. It felt like things were just more efficient. Things were streamlined. The company was working. Like, it feels like the company's not working anymore. It feels like it's struggling to get things in order. I feel like we are completely lucky that we even have fight cards that look good with how inept some of the decisions are over there. Maybe the company's hanging on by some thin threads here, and those threads are probably Sean Shelby, Nick Maynard, and that's probably about it. And maybe people we don't know about behind the scenes, but other than that, Dana White, he's off on a mansion or on a yacht half the time. WME have no idea what they're doing. Running a fight promotion. It's just a lot of weird things. And again, this fight's weird, where it's a good fight, but it's not the best fight. It's an 8 out of 10, so it's really good. But, man, we have a 10 out of 10 fight ready, waiting. Both sides are willing. Just pay the man, Shirley. Pay the man. Like, think about, what's really Colby asking much more? Like, his check to go from $300,000 to $500,000? Like, honestly? Like, are we... UFC are the cheapest motherfuckers out there. Come on, pay the man.
Yeah, if it genuinely is a money dispute, I'm willing to bet that it has something to do more with pay-per-view points than anything else. Because if Colby Covington is going to be recognized as an interim champion, which I don't believe he officially is anymore. Correct me if I'm wrong. I know that at some point very recently, within the last several weeks or so, the UFC website, I guess before the redesign, it still showed Colby Covington as the interim champion. So
I have no idea. And for example, Daniel Cormier, I thought he was stripped before he vacated. Like they already said Jon Jones versus Gusman was for the light heavyweight title. Like there was never interim title at any point. I would assume it's sort of those things where he sort of is stripped, but you can have the belt and use it for promotion once we actually have the fight.
Like he is the interim champion if it's convenient. So when you want to have your photo op with Donald Trump, oh yes, he's the champion, and we're gonna sit this belt on the desk in the Oval Office, and we're gonna pretend like this really matters, and this is a huge deal, and you got your MAGA hat on and the belt and thumbs up and smiles. But now when it comes time to, in my estimation, it'll be the pay-per-view points, and now we say, hey, I did this photo op. I've been parading around with this belt, with your blessing, this belt that you gave me. It's time for me to get paid like I have the belt. So he would be granted some sort of pay-per-view points for that. And with Jon Jones already on the card, and he doesn't come cheap. Tyron Woodley being a champion as well. I'm sure they don't want to give him his pay-per-view points, but they got to. So maybe they just didn't want to divide this pie any further. But still,
it's a pie. It's a pie they can keep dividing, though. That's the funny part, right?
Just pay these guys what they earn. That seems like a pretty basic concept. But I guess it's not that basic when you look at least the vague picture we have of some of the finances at WME or Endeavor or whatever they call themselves, compared to the money they're bringing in compared to what they're paying the fighters. But I mean, that excuse should be tossed out the window. This is the beginning of a $300 million a year ESPN deal. Mm-hmm. Apparently now their pay-per-view revenue is going to go up. I think they're going to be earning 70% of their linear TV pay-per-views now. I forget which company is involved with that, but they are going to be earning more money. So pay the fighters more money. Just not, and it is once again, you would think a union would be very helpful right now.
The sad part is that any any top MMA fighter worth their salt, just go and look at boxing like purses and viewership and respected buy rates, etc. And look how they're getting paid compared to you. For example, I mean, let's just say, just for argument's sake, that the Therese Owens reporting is right, and UFC 232 did 900,000 pay-per-view buys. That's massive. Jon Jones got a guaranteed purse of $500K. $500,000. When Deontay Wilder, for example, just had a fight that did 325,000 pay-per-view buys, he got a guarantee of $4 million. And correct me if I'm wrong, and I believe the highest guaranteed purse that we've seen was $5 million for Conor McGregor. I think the Nate Diaz rematch.
I think that's right. I think 5 million sounds about right. And I think Diaz was guaranteed 2 or 3.
Yes. That they are underpaid, right? Like Conor McGregor is criminally underpaid by the UFC. A guy of his stature should be getting paid around 20, 30, 40 million plus a fight every time.
To walk in the door, he should be getting paid that much. Like he should getting paid like what Mayweather's guarantees.
Yes.
So I just broke out the calculator app on my phone.
Calculator.
And just did a quick little computation here. So at 900,000 buys, and say everyone ordered it HD, $65 a pop, that is just shy of $59 million.
And that's not including international TV rights. That's not including the gate. That's not including merchandise. That's not including X, Y, and Z.
Sponsors. That's not, And granted, some of that money will be divvied up with some of the linear TV cable providers, but also a great amount of sales for the UFC come from people ordering directly on Fight Pass, where there is nobody to split the cut with.
Yes.
So you just wonder, like, okay, where's this money going? Probably to the snow being imported to Dana White's driveway.
Or his kid's Sweet 16, where they brought who?
I think, was it Drake or Kendrick Lamar or something?
I think it was a level below that. I don't want to be too like
Big Sean.
It might have been Big Sean. It might have been Big Sean.
No disrespect, because he is kind of a level below Kendrick, but that's another story.
But it was definitely something like that. And again, I mean, a $4+ billion sale. Yeah. Dana White got paid at least $360 million off of that. And I mean, these fighters are fucking fighting for scraps. Even the top guys, like Jon Jones, with how much I really despise the narratives that Jon Jones has put out and Dana White has put out, I'm on Jon Jones' side 110% if he wants to start talking about how he's underpaid. Because he is. He absolutely is. Every single person there is underpaid. Amanda Nunes and Chris Cyborg getting paid under $500K is fucking criminal. It just is. Like, the entire thing is just criminal. And shout out to Leslie Smith, Lucas Middlebrook, Project Spearhead, obviously. Go, if you're a fighter, go hit them up if you haven't yet. Shame on you, honestly.
I mean, really, at this point with the money that's going into this company right now, and the money that's being handed out to the fighters, and the venue switch at 232, and Colby Covington, God forbid I defend him again, but Colby Covington pretty much just being handed this belt just as a prop, and then having the power of that belt stripped away from him arbitrarily. These are all things that scream unionize. And now, I mean, straight up and down, if the fighters are not trying to unionize, I feel very little sympathy toward them, because the writing is on the wall. You are not going to be treated fairly. So unless you do something about it, just allow yourself to keep being a victim, continue grabbing your ankles and on the front lawn of Zuffa's offices.
Yep, and if you are out there supporting them, if you are actually a member of Project Spearhead as a fighter, please be vocal. Like, don't be silent with your support. if you are supporting them as a fighter. I think being vocal, joining Leslie Smith in that sort of fight is important. Even if you are the level of Occasion Johnson or even lower and you're in the UFC, go out there and voice your opinion. Otherwise nothing's going to get changed. None of you are going to get paid what you guys all deserve. But beside that, Woodley, Usman, I like the fight. Obviously not the best fight to make. And Jon Jones versus Anthony Smith, it is what it is. Ant, final thoughts. Let's wrap up the show.
Final thoughts. Yeah, I don't know what to think anymore. Whatever.
What?
Things just happen, and we try to figure it out, and nobody can make any sense of it. But 235 should be a great card, so I'm looking forward to hopefully being able to cover that one in person.
Oh, that's right. You're gonna make the trip out to Vegas. You make the drive.
Yeah, because I'll take a flight because I have a credit from the airline from the canceled trip for 232.
Nice.
So go ahead and use that credit and
Yes.
And go ahead and get some live coverage there.
Yes, absolutely. That makes perfect sense. Let the people know where they can find you, Ant.
All right, you can find me on Twitter at Ant Walker MMA. That's ANTWALKER MMA. Also check out Sherdog.com. I've got a plethora of articles in the works right now. Got a couple that have just gotten published. Our year-end articles. So I have the fight of the year, which is already out. Submission of the year should be out later today. My Ask Ant mailbag column published Friday is live, of course, and I've got robbery of the year on the way as well. As soon as we get off air, I'm going to finish writing that article.
And hit up Mike Fridley because he has all the videos of UFC 232 that have not been posted yet, including your UFC 232 post-fight show with Oscar Willis of the Mac Show or the Mac Life. And I gotta say, that post-fight show is amazing. That needs to be seen by everyone. I hope Mike didn't watch it and was like, nah, I'm not putting this shit out. Fuck
man, that thing was super trash, man. Everybody was walking in the shot. It was brutal, man. And shout out to your man, part of the UFC staff, who looked me dead in the eye, looked you dead in the eye, looked at Oscar dead in the eye, and proceeded to walk through the shot multiple times. Shout out to that guy.
I'm so mad. I was like 20 feet away getting something from my computer, and I couldn't be at the camera being like, yo, what are you doing? We're shooting here.
We should have just interviewed him.
Oh, that would have been good. That would have been really good content. I would have liked that. But anyways, I'm Matt, the Hipster Hunter. UFC 235. It's a fantastic card. The two main events, or two co-main events, so to speak, are what they are. Jon Jones, if he's not fighting Daniel Cormier, sure fight the number one contender. Unfortunately, that number one contender is Anthony Smith, who none of us think beats Jon Jones. And obviously, we all think Woodley versus Covington, whatever you think of Covington, is the fight to make next. I think everyone from all walks of life can probably agree on that. And it's not being made. And I'm with Ant here. There's something fishy. And whenever Ali Abdelaziz is involved, I get my tinfoil hat just comes on. But anyways, you can find me at Matt Hunter, MCR, all platforms, MCR Radio Show on Twitter, MCR Podcast on Instagram for the show, and Mixed Combat Radio on Facebook, all platforms, Mixed Combat Radio. Hit the like button, share the show, subscribe. If you listen on podcast, drop that 5-star review. Patreon.com/Mixed Combat Radio. We are posting a Patreon-only show for free in about an hour. That will be some boxing content. I know we had some boxing fans on earlier hating that we were doing some UFC and MMA content. It's all right. Boxing fans are a little bit bitter. I understand. But anyways, have a great day. Peace.
Are you off your tits? Have you been smoking something?